It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're wrapping up 1998 with Christmas weekend, literally falling on Christmas Day, December 25th. And I want to clarify something that I said last time. I said that there wasn't going to be a 1998 leftover episode because of the next week having a couple movies there. There actually will be a 1998 leftovers episode for the week after that, on January 8th, because I'm not seeing any big new wide releases of notable releases to talk about. So that'll be when I'll do the 1998 leftover episode. So there actually will be one. It's not this one. It's not the one coming up after this, but it will be the one after that one. So just wanted to clarify that because I said last time I wasn't going to do it, but there's an open weekend for it. So with that said, we've got 9 movies to look at here, and many notable ones. Some not so great. Some good. Some well, let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Robin Williams and Patch Adams. Excuse me, I had to get that schmaltz out of there. That was a terrible joke. I'm sorry about that, but fitting for a terrible movie because Patch Adams, wow, just absolutely wow. I mean, anybody that thought What Dreams May Come was way too pretentious and too sentimental should have seen this movie and really should have given this movie more smack than it actually did. The sad thing is that this movie was bashed badly by critics, and for good reason, and yet it was one of the biggest box office hits that came out at the time. It made over $200 million over a budget of $90 million, and sadly, it was a film that not only kind of derailed Robin Williams' career, but also Tom Shadyac. You gotta remember, Tom Shadyac was on a roll at this point. Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which he launched Jim Carrey into superstardom. He followed that up with The Nutty Professor, which rejuvenated Eddie Murphy's career. And then he followed that up with Liar Liar, which is one of the biggest hits of Jim Carrey's career, and one of the funniest comedies ever made. So 3 great comedies to start off his career, and despite the fact that this was a big hit, this was the film that really kind of dampened his growing star power, because after this, his movies did not... There was a point where his movies were not the biggest hits. He did a couple of movies that... He did one other movie that was a huge hit, and that was Bruce Almighty. But after that, stuff like Dragonfly, Evan Almighty, and then after that, he just kind of fell off the face of the earth, but mostly because of health reasons later on after he did Evan Almighty. But, yeah, Patch Adams is one of those really, really bad movies. A movie that is so terrible. The man himself that the film is based off of has been very critical of the film. Like, saying that it sacrificed much of the message of the film that he was trying to sell to make a film. And he's even told Roger Ebert himself that he hated that movie. And that's how bad it is. And it basically all the problems with the movie is that out of all the aspects of his life and activism, the film portrays him simply as a funny doctor. And, like, it just was not that. It just was pretty much that. Like, and he even said that he doesn't hate Robin Williams. And I think that's pretty obvious to say. He basically said he's enormously grateful for his wonderful performance of his early life, which has allowed the Gesundheit Institute to continue and expand its work. And Williams himself has actually supported St. Jude Children's Hospital for several years after the film came out. So I'm glad that that Robin Williams and Patch Adams had at least good terms in terms of the fact that that the real Patch Adams didn't really hate him for this. Just the movie itself was just a bad movie altogether. Like he says, it basically doesn't make Patch Adams a unique character whatsoever. It's just Robin Williams doing the Dead Poet Society thing again, doing the Good Morning Vietnam thing again, doing the Awakenings thing again. Those were done in far superior films. And Robin Williams didn't really need to do this to try to be in an Oscar baitish type role. He already won an Academy Award for Good Will Hunting the year before, and this is a film that just really stinks of sentimentality overload, and like the story overall just is absolutely a disaster. Like there's a character in this movie played by Monica Potter who is a bland character to begin with. She's there to just be a generic love interest, and her biggest thing is that her biggest fear is that people have been attracted to me for so many years. It's just like, if you have to say that to try to sell it as an emotional moment, you clearly have a really bad script to work off of. And this is written by Steve O'Derrick, who also did the Ace Ventura movies. He did Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and he also did The Nutty Professor and Nothing to Lose. So he was also a pretty prolific guy back then who was getting kind of screwed over, got kind of screwed over after this because he didn't make as many notable films, of which, although he did Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius, he wrote Nutty Professor 2, he wrote Bruce Almighty, he did Kung Pao Into the Fist and Barnyard, but nothing ever reached the levels that he had beforehand after this movie came out. And I think that, and what's worse about that character that I was talking about is that it's based off of a real person, but that person was never a love interest. It wasn't even the same sex as the movies indicate. It was just a guy, and instead they just took that and just made her into a bland love interest who eventually gets killed off by this mentally challenged patient who ends up committing suicide in the process. And it's just it's a mess of a movie on so many levels, and the message of what Patch Adams was trying to do and trying to get by is just completely wasted over on a really bad script that just feels like something out of the Schlock Factory. And it's a mess of a film. It's a really bad movie. And everybody looks at this movie and goes, "Oh, you got to respect the dead for this." I mean, Robin Williams is Robin Williams. I mean, Robin Williams can't make a bad movie. Bullshit. Like, Robin Williams is one of the greatest actors that we ever had. He's allowed to make bad movies. He's made bad movies. So don't tell me that this isn't a bad movie because he's dead. Like, I've heard that argument several times, and it's just like, just stop. Like, nobody's saying that Robin Williams is a bad actor, or nobody should even have that set in their mind, but this is a bad movie for him. And even though he's not the worst thing about it, just the fact that he has to play the same character we've seen done over and over and over again in a story that would have made for a much more interesting movie if you had actually gotten the real story from this guy, what this doctor was all about in real life. But no, they just make Robin Williams the funny doctor with a heart of gold, and the doctors are the ones who are the evil people because patients need doctors. Patients don't need friends. It's just like, this movie is an insult to the world of hospitals and doctors and nurses and medical school and all this and everything about this all together. It's just like I'm at a loss for words at how bad this movie was. I was amazed at how bad this movie was, and quite frankly, I think a lot of people really need to know how bad this movie is. So, yeah, avoid this movie like the plague if you haven't seen it. And I don't care if Robin Williams is in this movie. Go watch him in much better movies. What Dreams May Come is a far superior movie that came out this year that Robin Williams was in. Yet everybody who saw that movie, nearly everybody, hated that movie. It's been a punchline ever since. But no, not this movie. No, this is a classic film because it made money, and the critics are wrong about this one. It's just like, no, the critics were actually right about this one. You guys were wrong about What Dreams May Come. And yeah, unfortunately, Robin Williams went through a dry patch during this point too, because his next couple of films were not that great, but then he would kind of rebound in 2002 with a couple of movies that he had there, kind of outside of his normal stick. So I guess in the end it actually paid off for him. But in this, yeah, it's a terrible movie. Avoid this movie like the plague. Patch Adams. So let's go ahead and try to get away from the schmaltzy stuff here, and let's look at this movie with Julia Roberts and Susan Sarandon, Stepmom. Okay, that's the last time I'm doing that joke. Yeah, you could. It's pretty much more the same schmaltziness that was in Patch Adams, only nowhere near as bad as Patch Adams, because Patch Adams was based off of a real person. This is just a Lifetime movie of the week that has way too much schmaltz with it. You have Julia Roberts, Susan Sarandon, and Ed Harris, and it follows a terminally ill woman dealing with her ex-husband's new lover who will become their child's stepmother. And this is Chris Columbus. This is the first movie he's directed since 9 months. And, yeah, needless to say, despite the fact that Julia Roberts is in it, and usually she doesn't turn in a bad performance, and neither does Susan Sarandon, it's a very manipulative film. It has a lot of the same problems that Patch Adams does, but the difference is, this isn't based off of a real person whose life story was basically turned into the Robin Williams formula. This is a film that's just something like I said, it should be the Lifetime movie of the week. It's a film that you would see on like the ABC movie of the week, a TV movie storyline, but because it has these big actors involved here, like, it has to go to the big screen, and you expect so much better from a director like Chris Columbus. I mean, it's a movie that just really is not that worth it. It's just a film that just tries way too hard to hit you with the emotional punches, even though the emotional moments in here are not that great. The writing overall is mediocre. The storyline is not that great, and despite the fact that it has these top talents involved in terms of actors, they're not really doing a whole lot to give this movie the edge that it really needs to give. And sadly, the movie just falls apart on just those cheap emotional moments in there. Like, they try way too hard to be it's another Oscar bait type movie. It's a film it's a film that's trying to win Oscars and will never and didn't even come close to winning any Oscars, even though Susan Sarandon got a nomination for Best Actress for the Golden Globe Awards. But that's pretty much as close as it's gonna get. And like Patch Adams, people bought it. Made over $159 million worldwide. Was a big hit, and it was actually a remake that they made in India, I think. They actually made an Indian version of it called We Are Family that came about 12 years later and was not a big hit whatsoever. So, but yeah, not much more to say about that one. That is Stepmom. So, on to the next movie, and that is The Faculty. First mistake for this movie, this should not have been released on Christmas. I mean, I get it. Scream and Scream 2 were both big hits, but generally speaking, horror movies do not do well during Christmas. Just like sci-fi movies don't do well at Christmas. Like, I know after I Am Legend was a big hit, but that was as Fox decided to put the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still out towards Christmas, and that bombed because Keanu Reeves is no Will Smith. That movie, I Am Legend, became a hit at Christmas because of Will Smith. Like, Keanu Reeves is no Will Smith, despite the fact that he is of his legacy now, but that's just kind of what I'm talking about with this movie. Like, this should not have been released around Christmas. This should have been a movie that should have been released around maybe January, early February, somewhere where From Dusk Till Dawn was released, which coincidentally, this is Robert Rodriguez's first film since then, and of course Kevin Williamson wrote the script for this. And as you can tell from the plot of the film, you have this high school in Lockhart, Texas, where the students suspect the teaching staff of being aliens who are intent on making the students their victims. So it's got a mix of there are a lot of influences from different sci-fi classics, most notably Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Thing, and it's definitely noticeable here. And it's kind of a fault of the film, but there are definitely moments in the film that actually do kind of like bring the movie up to another level, to where it is kind of a fun movie. It's a film that at the time probably did not get the proper respect it deserves, but it got its cult following over the years, mostly because Robert Rodriguez is a good director, and he definitely shows it in here. The casting overall is pretty good. Everybody fits their characters kind of well. Jordana Brewster, Clea Duvall, Laura Harris, Josh Hartnett, Famke Janssen, Piper Laurie, Bebe Neuwirth, Robert Patrick, Usher, Jon Stewart, Elijah Wood. I mean, it's got a solid cast to it, and there are elements where it is kind of cheesy, but in a way it's still kind of fun at the same time. When it takes a lot when it shows its inspirations, it's like almost exposure. Like, it's all over the place. Like, it really exposes it out in the open pretty quickly, and it gets annoying a little bit, but never to the point where the movie really kind of falls apart because of it. Even though the ending is a little bit kind of a cliched twist ending, like you don't really have a good. You look at it and you think, that's not really a great way to end this movie, honestly. Like, this is not the kind of twist I was expecting with this film. And, I don't know. I thought the movie was okay. It was a movie that I saw it. Kind of glad I did, but I have no real intention of ever going back to watching it. It's a film that, like I said, I thought it was alright. Good for a one-time watch, but nothing else after that. Mostly I think they just put this out there because of what happened with the Scream movies. And, there's a dip. If you can tell the big difference between the Scream movies and why those were successful, and this was kind of not at the time. Horror movies and sci-fi films do not do well at the box office during Christmas time. That's just something that very rarely happens. So that's The Faculty. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and we have here Mighty Joe Young. I will say this, the marketing for Mighty Joe Young was really not the best, and you can probably tell that's the reason why this movie unfortunately bombed at the box office. But this is a film based off the 1949 film of the same name, which is technically a sequel to King Kong, about a giant mountain gorilla brought to a wildlife preserve in Los Angeles by a young woman who raised him, the woman played by Charlize Theron, and the zoologist played by Bill Paxton, to protect him from the threat of poachers until one seeks Joe out in order to take his revenge. And the director of this is Ron Underwood, who gave us City Slickers. He also did a number of other movies of noteworthiness, including Tremors, Heart and Souls, very underrated film. this is after he did Speechless, which was probably his first major misfire as a film. This is probably the last decent film that he did as a director, because after this he did Pluto Nash, and then he basically just went to the TV route, and he did a bunch of movies for Freeform, NBC, and basically a lot of Christmas movies. And the movie overall actually is a lot better than I think the trailer definitely puts on. I think the effects overall are really good. The moments in there that seem kind of really cheesy in the commercials actually do work in the actual movie. I think they really struggled to sell this movie to people, and I think they already knew kind of that this was going to be a hard time to sell this film. It's not like these other Disney live action films that we talked about. We've been talking about how these movies, like these live action Disney films coming out around this time, were not the biggest hits, mostly because most of them were not great films. I mean, this isn't Meet the Deedles. This isn't something like Mr. Magoo or Rocket Man. This is a film that was definitely trying to be something more different and more unique, and actually try to do something here. And I don't think it worked all the way through, but there are still a lot of moments in this particular film that I definitely found a lot to admire about a lot in this. Like, I think the CG effects in here still hold up very well. I thought the emotional moments in here held up very well. I thought Charlize Theron and Bill Paxton worked off each other very well. There's a great cast in this movie. Regina King is also in here. Naveen Andrews from Lost. David Paymer. It's a really solid film, but it definitely has a lot of flaws that make it not enough for me to say you need to see this movie. You need to go out and see this movie now. But if you want to see it, go into it knowing that the trailers are probably misleading you big time. If you do that, you actually find a lot to admire about this movie that I think a lot of people would give it credit for. I think it's a lot better than the trailers put on here. I think it is a good film, but it definitely could have been a great film. It's a film that really, I'd say watch it once. You probably will enjoy it, but it's not something where I would say it's going to be something you'll want to watch over and over again. I'm glad I saw it, but it definitely needed a little bit more of a spark to make it stand out on its own and actually be something that's worth the watch over and over again. But for a one-time watch, I thought it did its job fairly well. So that is Mighty Joe Young. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line. The war film that definitely got overshadowed by Saving Private Ryan in 1998. This is Terrence Malick, who wrote and directed this film. It's the first movie he's directed since Days of Heaven, which was 20 years ago. And then after that, he did stuff like The New World about 7 years later. And then starting in 2011, he started to be a little bit more prolific as a director with stuff like The Tree of Life, To the Wonder, Knight of Cups, Song to Song. Some may say some very pretentious films, at least, but The Thin Red Line, you have a story here that's basically a fictionalized version of the Battle of Mount Austin, which was part of the Guadalcanal campaign at the Pacific Theater of World War II. It portrays U.S. soldiers of C Company, 1st Battalion, 20th Century Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division, and they're played by Sean Penn, Jim Caviezel, Nick Nolte, Elias Koteas, and Ben Chaplin. The novel's title alludes to a line from Rudyard Kipling's poem Tommy, in which he calls the British foot soldiers the Thin Red Line of heroes. And you also have people like Adrian Brody, George Clooney, John Cusack, Woody Harrelson, Jared Leto, John C. Reilly, and John Travolta among the cast. There was also scenes with Bill Pullman, Lucas Haas, and Mickey Rourke that were actually cut from the movie and later showed up on the Criterion version of this. And this was a film that that took 7 months to edit and was originally 5 hours long. And basically they had to cut a lot of stuff down in this. And it's a good movie, but like I said, it got overshadowed by the far superior war film, Saving Private Ryan. I think this is a solid war film, but like I said, Saving Private Ryan is the definitive war movie. I think it is the best contemporary war film that we've had up to that point. I think it is a much better film than this film. But the performances overall, the action sequences overall are well done. And for Terrence Malick, it's probably his best overall film as a director. And it's a good war film. It definitely has a lot there that keeps you invested in what's going on. You really do believe in these performances. You do believe in the drama going on, and the cinematography is nicely done. The music overall is very well done. It's a really good war film. I would say, it's like I said, I prefer Saving Private Ryan, but this is a good close second. So that's The Thin Red Line. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie, and that is Hurly Burly. Another movie with Sean Penn in it. Sean Penn plays a cocaine-addicted womanizing casting director who lives in the Hollywood Hills with his friend Mickey, played by Kevin Spacey, who's come to stay with him temporarily after a fallout with his wife, along with their buddies, Artie, played by Gary Shandling, and out-of-work actor Phil, played by Chaz Palm Terry, Eddie, played by Penn, Mickey, again played by Spacey, living a life of decadence and immortality, and Eddie falls in love with this woman, Darlene, played by Robin Wright Penn, but she is also seeing the married Mickey. Eddie comes to question his life and purpose, while Mickey is content with the situation. Through a haze of drug and booze, the four friends inch closer to rock bottom. And other than that, this is based off of a play by David Rabe, who wrote the script for this, and considered the action of the 3-hour-plus play into 2 hours, and updated the settings from the mid-1980s to the late 1990s, and really, that's all I really know about this. It also has Anna Paquin and Meg Ryan. I've never seen the film, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. The reviews for it are not that strong, so it could go either way with this one. So that's pretty much all I know about this one. That's Hurly Burly. So let's go ahead and move on to the next movie. Another movie with an actor from the Thin Red Line in it, John Travolta in A Civil Action. So this is Steven Zazilian, who wrote Schindler's List, his second film as a director after searching for Bobby Fischer. Based off the book by Jonathan Harv, tells the true story of a court case about environmental pollution that takes place in Woburn, Massachusetts in the 1980s. The film and court case revolves around the issue of trichloroethylene. I think that's how you pronounce it. I could be wrong on that, but it's an industrial solvent and it's contamination of a local aquifer. And a lawsuit was filed over industrial operations that appear to have caused fatal causes of leukemia and cancer, as well as a wide variety of other health problems along with the citizens of the city. Duvall, it also has Robert Duvall, who got nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. You see James Gandolfini in a pre-Tony Soprano role, along with Dan Hedaya, John Lithgow, William H. Macy, Kathleen Quinlan, and Tony Shalhoub. I barely remember this film. I saw it once many years ago, and I remember thinking it was okay. I don't think it was anything too spectacular. I just thought it was another one of those Oscar baitish type movies that was trying to get the Oscar buzz on it, and it just really never got any notoriety to it. At least to me, it didn't. But like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, so I can't really say if it's held up after all these years. But one time I saw it, I thought it was okay, but it was nothing that I really wanted to go back to, honestly. But that's all I got for you on that one. That's A Civil Action. So on to the next movie, and that is The Swindle. So The Swindle tells the story of a pair of scam artists. One day, Betty brings in Maurice, a treasurer of a multinational company, and Maurice is due to transfer 5 million francs out of Switzerland. And Betty is convinced he plans to steal that money. On whose side is Betty, Victor's, Maurice, or only her own? And you have Isabel Huppert as Elizabeth and Betty, and Michael Surratt as Victor. That's, again, pretty much all I know about this one, because I have not seen this movie, so I can't really say if it's any good or not. Not much more I can say about that one. So let's go ahead and move on to the last one we have here, and that is The Theory of Flight. Okay, I know I said it was done with that joke, and I even had the trash can there, but yeah, we started the show with some very schmaltzy Oscar baitish type of movies, and we're ending with very schmaltzy Oscar bait type movies, because holy mother of God, this is the definition of an Oscar bait movie. I mean, you have Helena Bonham Carter playing a woman with motor neurone disease, and the film deals with the sexuality of people with disabilities. And Kenneth Branagh is in here, and would you believe this is the first film directed by Paul Greengrass in 9 years? This was the film before Paul Greengrass became the Paul Greengrass that we know him as today, because he followed us up with Bloody Sunday, and then eventually with The Bourne Supremacy, and then his contributions with the Bourne films, and after that, after this movie, his career got a whole lot better. But this is the very textbook definition of an Oscar bait movie, a film that's just begging for Oscars, begging to tug at your heartstrings with the most manipulative performances possible. It's a movie that is just your typical generic Oscar film. The only thing that's notable about this movie is the fact that this was the last film that Gene Siskel reviewed before his death on February 20th of 1999. This was the last film he reviewed on Siskel and Ebert, and he gave the film a thumbs up. Roger gave it a thumbs down, and that's probably the only notable bit of history here about this film, is that this was the last film that Gene Siskel reviewed before his untimely death. In fact, it was a couple months after this movie came out, and like I said, it just kind of falls into the same problems with most of these movies, like Patch Adams and Stepmom. It's a film that's begging for Oscars and just doesn't want to try to actually do something unique or interesting about it. It just wants the Oscars. It just wants to be that movie that wants to win Best Picture. And luckily, people looked at this and said, "You're out of your mind if you think this is going to win any noteworthy awards." And just like, yeah, it just kind of came and went. So not much more to say about that one. Probably the worst movie that Helen Bonham Carter and Kenneth Branagh have done. And trust me, that's saying a lot compared to some of the movies that they've done. So that's the theory of flight. So with that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies, and we wrap up 1998. Next week, we jump into 1999 with 6 movies, including Hillary and Jackie, Affliction, Playing by Heart, The High-Low Country, Another Day in Paradise, and Port de Jima. 6 movies to look at. Movies that a lot of them I'm not very much familiar with, so that one could be a very quick one. But like I said, the next week will be the 1998 Leftovers episode. So we'll cover the movies that I didn't get to cover this week, in this year, on the next episode. But on the episode after this next one coming up. But that's it. So until then, thank you for watching. And always, if you want to see more videos like this, check out the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time for the next video. And until then, as always, take care.